What does it take to lead a sales division? Drive a company to a record month? Beyond the numbers, our guest today is an expert of relationship based sales in a high volume world. You're listening to the Adapt AI podcast Spotlight series, where we feature the change makers and disruptors shaping the future of business and where we learn how industry leaders stay ahead of the game. Want to stay ahead too? Click subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Haley. Our guest today is the definition of high performing leadership. If you want to know how to balance passion, performance, and parenthood, this episode is for you. Get ready to hear her strategies on turning a complex transaction into a true client partnership and how she manages to do it all while being a dedicated mom to two toddlers. Two beautiful toddlers, I would say. Welcome, Bethany.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Oh, thank you for being our guest here. So, for everyone listening, can you please start by introducing yourself and, just give us a brief background on the work that you do and how you got started in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Bethany Cuthbertson, and I am in the moving industry. So I am in relocation. I move people anywhere, everywhere. It's really funny. Sometimes just down the road, sometimes across the country, sometimes out of the country. It just kind of depends on what they need. Kind of jumping into this, I never thought I'd be here. That's for sure. When I went to college after high school, I started studying broadcast journalism and communications. Really thought I was going to do something with reporting or something in that world. Ended up taking a job doing some marketing and sales while I was in college.
Mm.
Quickly learned I didn't like the sales that I was doing, but I was working for a radio station and I was doing the copyright, which I loved doing that portion of it.
Mhm.
And then after that, I actually ended up doing marketing for a security company. That was my full-time job at that point. And I had, at that point, completely dropped out of college and was like, maybe I just stick here and I do this because I was loving it and it was great. Started doing marketing for the security company. I was there for almost 4 years doing that for them. Did eventually jumped into sales there as well because I thought, wow, I've learned so much about security and about security systems and different things out there. Maybe I can sell this. So started selling it. And then from there, my jump to the moving industry was pretty wild. I was actually doing some work on the side for a small moving company who was an agent for a national company
Mhm.
here in Mansfield, Ohio. Just helping them build their website, do some brochures on the side, things like that, until eventually I was offered a position. My husband will tell you that I am a person that absolutely hates change. So the thought of jumping from what I was already doing to something completely different
Okay.
that looked like it was a full commission structure was a little scary because
Mm.
obviously if you don't sell you don't make any money,
Right.
but eventually I made the jump, made the leap, and it was one of the best decisions of my life for sure. And so I've been in the moving industry now since 2019, and as of right now I wouldn't want it any other way.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you for walking us through that. When you mentioned like from loving copywriting in the radio station to eventually transitioning to marketing for a security firm, and then eventually it's I think organically lead up to sales. Would you say that marketing and sales go hand in hand anyway?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. They really do. Because for one, you absolutely want to know the product that you're selling, regardless of what that is. If you're marketing it, you obviously have to know about it. Same way if you're selling it, you have to know about the product. So it's important to really kind of be able to hone in on that and say, yeah, I know everything that there is to know about this product. And you're marketing every single day, whether you know it or not. It's what you post on your social medias. It's how you react when it comes to your customers, the kind of rapport you're building, because you're marketing your business.
Wonderful. Since you mentioned that, what would you say is the single most transferable principle, from all different industries, but still the heart of what you're doing right now across industries? How does it manifest in, building rapport with a homeowner now during an estimate?
Sure. Yeah, I think it all comes back to respect. It's respect for yourself, it's respect for the client, and it's respect for the company that you're working for. If you don't have that for all three, you're not going to be the best that you can at what you're doing and what you're selling. So to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, I think if you have to trust that the company you're working for, it's a good company. You want to fully believe in the product that you're selling and the thing that you're doing.
Mhm.
You have to respect yourself to say, hey, like, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to this product. Here's why my solutions are great for in what I have to offer. And then also respecting your client, because I mean, in my industry and many others, sometimes you're dealing with people who have never moved before. They've never hired a professional mover. It's really a hand holding and kind of walking them through and just kind of explaining the different things, because people don't know. They don't know that you can't take like propane tanks on trucks and gas cancel the gas, and you shouldn't transfer candles because if it's the middle of summer and they're moving to California, it's going to be hot. They're going to melt. It could ruin things.
Wow.
So it's all so many different moving parts, to what they're doing. And then you have the other side of it too, where moving it's one of the top three most stressful things that can happen to a person. It's literally up there between death. It's with death and divorce. And then it's moving. It's extremely stressful. So just knowing that that person's going through a lot
Mhm.
at that point in time. And there's a lot to remember. There's a lot to do. Sometimes it's a happy move, hey, our family's growing. We're getting to a point where we need a bigger house, and you deal with the other parts of it too, where maybe somebody's older, they're downsizing, they need to move to an assisted living or a smaller home just so they can take care of it, and that comes with a lot of obstacles, and sometimes it comes with a lot of sadness too. So really,
Right.
just that respect for your client and just saying, hey, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I'm here to help. So respect between all three, it's going to get you through.
I love what you said there because it's it's an emotional process as well for your clients as well, and
Yeah.
being able to empathize with whatever life event they're experiencing, whether, as you said, either death or divorce, or it could be like a life change for them, in between those kind of like more of like major events.
Yeah.
um I've seen it plenty of times wherein some people, I wouldn't say generally, some people in the sales industry or sales position, regardless of the industry, is just more about the numbers. But here we have a heart led, sales expert here who cares deeply about the relationship that she's building between the company that she represents and the customer that she's serving, which I think is very
Yeah.
beautiful because integrity could sometimes be not seen, that I would say rampantly or obviously for some who are in the sales position. So I love how you said that it's being respectful of all aspects, and it's kind of like that synergy as well that you build, because you'll never know, um, that person that you're serving right now could refer you to someone who's needing
Exactly.
this that you're.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of our business is word of mouth, and I really think it's important to ask yourself like, if you're looking at a sales career, ask yourself the question, like, who am I selling for? Because at the end of the day, if you're selling for your own pocket only, you're probably not going to make it in the industry. You're selling for yourself and your family, but you also have to think about the other people whose work requires you to sell. So for example, like in our industry, like my movers that we have, they're all fantastic guys. If I'm not selling, they're not working. So it's not only just about me feeding my family, it's also about making sure they have the work so that they can feed theirs and take care of theirs the way that they need to. So it's really like an added weight on your shoulder that it's almost important to have, because you need to realize that hey, this isn't just it's not just to line my pockets to be good at what I'm doing. It's to make sure that these people come back time after time. If they ever need a move, if they're referring me, if their friends and family are moving, I want them to call me and say, hey, so and so's moving, I gave them your phone number. Like, that's really important. So
Wow. How hands-on are you in the process of it all? How personalized do you extend in terms of your like service, to your customers in this industry? or
Yeah, really whatever they need. I tell people like we are everything from I can just come help you move your big stuff if that's what you need to you can literally hand me your house keys and I'll meet you on the other end if that's what you need me to do. It really just kind of depends. With a lot of my older clientele, it's a lot of downsizing, as I had mentioned. So it's a lot of going in and just kind of you spend some extra time just kind of hand holding, helping them through like what's going to fit in their new place. I recently had a client who he was downsizing. Him and his wife were moving into a senior living facility and they could only take one bedroom suite. But at the time she was currently in the hospital. And so he was making all these decisions by himself.
uh-huh.
But being a typical man, he had no idea. And he was like, I think this bed and maybe this dresser. And I was like, I don't think she's going to want that. I haven't even met her, but I'm telling you, she's going to want these two because they match, and it's just kind of like, what's going to make sense? What kind of square footage are you going to? So you can have scenarios like that. Where the client just doesn't even know where to start. They've been in their home for 30 years. How do I declutter? How do I get to a point where this is what's going to make sense? Do I get a storage unit for these additional items that aren't going to fit in this house? But maybe this isn't my forever home. Maybe I'm here temporarily and my next house will fit in. So is it something that's worth weighing the option of? Yeah, we're very hands-on, I'd say. I mean, it's a really case by case basis, whatever that client needs. Like I said, if they call me and they're like, hey, I just need you to move 10 pieces of furniture, I'm like, cool, that's the easiest part of my day, kind of here we are with this, but it's a lot more in depth for a lot of our clients.
There's so much details because, as you said, a man who's assisting his wife may not have thought of these kind of things, and it's good to be able to have that expert who not only cares about like moving one piece of furniture to another location, but like what makes sense in this particular situation. It's very detailed kind of service, which would you say that's also what makes you stand out and, hit that record breaking month in your in the business when
I
it
really hope so. And I do yeah, I do think so. Just because you'll hear from clients like, hey, like we really felt like we connected with you. Your quote was actually a little bit higher, but we just felt better about it. And is it because I took the extra time to sit down at the kitchen table with them after we did the walkthrough and I just talked through what the move looked like really painted the picture for them of, hey, when the guys get here on move day, this is what they're going to start by doing. Here's kind of what the day looks like. When we get to the destination, here's what it's going to look like over here. Here's all of your paperwork that you're going to get, because believe it or not, when you're hiring a mover, you're going to sign your life away because there's so much that happens with your move. And just kind of that added touch, I think, but it's the same thing that I would want somebody to do for me.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of why I try to lead in that instance. We were once getting a new air conditioning unit installed in our home, and we had gotten a quote from like a local company that everybody used. And obviously, like, I know nothing about air conditioning. My husband really doesn't know anything about it. So the
Mhm.
guy shows up at our house, is there 2 minutes, literally, like, doesn't really say anything, just kind of walks around and then says, I'll get you a quote. And we're like, okay, cool. He
You
leaves,
should ask.
emails me a quote in a couple days, and we're looking at it. Like I said, we've done our own research, but about as much as you can on something like that. And we thought, well, this
Right.
doesn't look that bad. And then I'm like, maybe we just get one more quote just as comparison.
Yeah.
We had another local company come out. The guy was there for an hour. He walked through our entire house with me and my husband. He crawled in my attic to make sure like lines were accessible. He
Uh,
walked around the outside and explained exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it and how long the project was going to take. And when he left my house, I looked at my husband and I said, I don't care if it's double, we're going with this company, because I didn't feel like the first one really cared or took the time to do anything. I felt like we were kind of written off at that point, and it wasn't double, but it was about 40% more than what the first guy had quoted. And I just no, we just went with it because it's like at the end of the day, I felt better about it.
mhm.
I feel like my clients do the same thing. You want to feel comfortable with the people that you're doing business with. You want to be able to pick up the phone, call them, text them if you have questions, because moving's a big life event.
Yeah, it's always, I would say, I resonate with that completely. It's always service first before the sales, because you may have gotten a lower quote from somebody else, but how could you trust that they're going to do it right the first time? And if, some wirings were not in place because they didn't inspect it when they should have, before they even provided the quote, that's going to be double work. And you're not only wasting or wasted the customer's time, it may be cost as well, because some wirings have to be re-routed or
Exactly.
whatnot, right? So it's a matter of really like being able to not only just see the bigger picture, but the details and the moving parts, pun intended,
Yeah.
that come
Yeah.
with the whole process itself. So yeah, definitely, I so resonate with what you're saying, and I do hope that that brings, awareness as well to people who are thinking of moving, or also people who are like, it's always like, I remember this saying, if you think hiring a professional is expensive, try amateur.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
it's really the difference between someone who knows what they're doing and really cares about the
Mhm.
quality that they're bringing, versus just the one who's just wants the business of it, or
Exactly.
numbers. So yeah, I totally resonate with that. Now, speaking of your record breaking month, what would you say? Because I'm just imagining, you mentioned earlier that it could be as simple as someone who just needs to move, like, from a small space to another, like whether be it offices or a house, or to like very personalized service where you give me your house key and I'll meet you there. Like, how often do you have to do that, or did you ever have to do that during that, record breaking month for you in the
Oh
business?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty often. So yeah, we usually it's called a full service move. It can be a white glove move. I mean, it just kind of depends. The clients do have a little bit of hands-on with that as far as we do want them there. When we're getting everything loaded out. We are doing an inventory on the items that are coming out. So we do need somebody there for those types of things. But yeah, I mean, you have a ton of that. You have a ton of where the client says, hey, you know what? Like I'm busy. I have work, I have kids, whatever the situation be. I don't have time to pack up my house. You're going to have to pack it. You're going to have to load it. You're going to have to drive it there. I'm going to need you to unload it. And sometimes I need you to unpack it too, and help me get set up in my new home. It just kind of depends on what they need, and what makes the most sense for them. But it happens a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of interstate moves. Obviously, those are a bigger ticket versus somebody that's just moving across town that just needs some help with some larger pieces. But you really get a mix of it all year round. It's just that during peak season, which for us is typically like May through September,
Mhm.
everybody's moving. It's everybody wants to get moved over the summer months. By the time school starts again in late August, it usually tends to slow back down a little bit for us. I think everybody's just trying to get in place before the new season. But it's always summer, which to me has always been a huge surprise because for me, every time we've moved, I swear it's always been the middle of winter. And I've always thought there's no way that I'd want to do this, Like I'd want somebody else to do this for summer. It's a little bit easier, like you can take some
Right.
trips, whatever. But yeah, in the cold, no way. It's terrible. One of the last times we moved, is actually the first house that we ever bought was on a hill, and we were getting our first snowstorm that evening, and this was right before I worked for a moving company, so we were still paying our friends with pizza and beer to help us get moved, and
Yeah.
we were using my husband's grandpa's box truck to get everything moved in. And we got to the point where we were just like throwing boxes in the garage to get them off the truck and done because we knew the storm was coming in and we just needed to be done. And I thought in that moment that I'd never move again, which we ended up doing. But thank God after that, I worked for a moving company and they were able to help because I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
Wow. There's a lot of details that really come with it. It's not only stressful for the family who's moving, but I could imagine for your team as well, like being it, regardless if it's off season, off peak season or peak season. How did you manage? What would you say would be one or two core mindset belief that you have been practicing or exercising in order for you to stay on top of all these details? Like, because it's only not the details of like, oh, how many pieces are we moving, which location, coordinating, but it's the emotional, as we talked about earlier, it's the emotional process of it as well. Being someone who has, before you even moved or have been part of the moving industry, you've experienced it yourself. Like, what did you leverage in terms of like the mindset in order to like be leading it in a successful way?
I think a big part of it is just know that it has to happen and it has to get done. But I think a key thing is communication between the customer to me, to my crews, just all around, and everybody having a really good sense of what's going on. In the CRM that we use, we have like a shared client notes section where
Mm.
everybody can see it. So it's notes for me, it's notes for the client about their move, and it's notes for the crew as well. Just because it's so hard to remember. You know, you'll talk to 4 to 8 people a day for different
Yeah.
homes that need moved, and so it's like, you know, unless you're in front of it in that moment, you can't. It's hard to remember. Like, oh, are we moving that piano? Did they say they were selling it ahead of time? You know, did they have a grandfather clock that needed prepped prior to? So it's all these little things.
Mhm.
So I really try to hone in on that note section, especially during peak season when it's easier to forget what, you know, you and a
Mhm.
client talked about. But it's not only for me, it's also for the client, because a lot of times they're getting 2 or 3 quotes for their move, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But
Mhm.
people will tend to forget what different salespeople told them in the move.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, I've learned the hard way where it's like, oh, well, she said that you guys would move this and it wouldn't be an extra charge. And it's like, oh, I don't think I said that, but I know this company does that. Did you maybe talk with them? Oh, maybe I did. So it's really just kind of clarifying for everybody. And it really helps the crew too, because you don't want to put them in that awkward, you know, position where they
Mhm.
show up on move day and there's no notes, or they have no idea what they're doing other than they're moving furniture and all they have is a small inventory. And then
Mhm.
all of a sudden, you know, the client's walking them through before they get the job started. And now the inventory is 2 times or 3 times more. You know, now that's awkward because they have to call me, they have to call the office, they have to figure out what's
Right.
going on. And then, you know, you're praying you don't get into a game of like, he said, she said at that point,
Right.
and you
Right.
know, just trying to figure out like where the communication was lost.
Yeah.
So it's really important. The other piece of that too is, you know, you don't always know what you're walking into, for me or for my crew. So if it is a big life change, for the client, you know, they could be have moving day can be a really hard day. And I feel like the guys do a really good job of just trying to ease through, laugh, have a good time while they're there on site. But it never hurts to add that note in there too, just for the crew of, hey, you know, so and so is, you know, it's time for them to downsize. They're, you know, they're transferring to assisted living, whatever it be, or hey,
Mhm.
even if it's a happy note, hey, so and so got promoted, they are moving here for work and they're super excited, or you know, anything like that, just to kind of keep that communication flowing. But it's there's nothing wrong with over communicating, and I say that 100 times a day because I would rather that client more than understand everything that's going to be going on with their move,
Mhm.
and the crew too, you know, just so everybody has clear communication on what's happening.
Wow. I totally agree with that because the more details that you need to stay on top of, the more that you there's I would say in this scenario, there's no such thing as over communicating because it could lead to like times three, as you said, inventory than what they were initially quoted for,
Mhm.
and they were actually given by another company with that figure. Have you
Yeah.
ever experienced that personally with your team wherein, how did you manage that? How did you was it something that a message that got lost in translation, or how did you navigate around it and like have the customer um think that no, it's not actually us, or we've communicated as much as we can?
Yeah, it happens a lot. And a lot of times it's, you know, the customer might not even realize. Like I said, this is something new for a lot of people. They may have been in their home for 30 years, you know, 30, 40 years, whatever it be. They may not have realized that they needed to pack certain things up a certain way before it can go, like table lamps, whatever. Or some they might just think they can just put them in the car. Um, there could be other instances too where they just got behind and they were afraid to tell me that they got behind on some packing or something like that, or hey, I just didn't get everything done. And we try really hard just to communicate. We always do a pre-call with our clients a couple of days before. Hey,
Okay.
how are things going? Do you think you're going to need any extra help? You know, and that's a really great time to try to catch it ahead of time, because I'd rather catch it 2 days out than catch it the day of when the crew shows up and they're calling like, hey, this person's not ready. There's nothing packed. You know, now we're adding an
Mm.
extra pack day in, and hoping it's not peak season when that happens, because then you're adding a whole extra day to something that doesn't even exist when you're already running at 100% capacity at that point. But if it does happen, the crews are great. They're willing to work, and those boys, I mean, they just go, they get the job done. It really does not matter. They're going to make the client happy. They're going to do what they can. If it's something where it's a lot and it turns into an extra day, I've had them go out the next morning and do it if they were planning to be off that day. We typically don't do a ton of moves on Sundays. Usually we try to give them Sundays off. We will do them occasionally, but I've had guys that have said, hey, you know what, I'm going to go on Sunday. We'll just get this client taken care of and make sure that they're good to go. So it's really just kind of bridging that gap in communication, because if I am getting that phone call, I want it to be not because it wasn't explained and that we weren't in clear communication of what was going. It was really just something happened and now you do need a little extra help, and that's okay. Like, we'll make it happen, we'll make it work. But just as long as that honesty is there with both, and we make
Right.
sure that this is really all that's there. And that's another part too of why doing on-site or at least a video walkthrough with your estimates are so important. I can't stress that enough for anybody that is looking at hiring a moving company. If you're
Mhm.
doing an estimate over the phone and it is, 10, 15 pieces, that's totally fine. But anything more than that, it's really important just to get eyes on that to make sure that you're quoted appropriately. All the time I'll hear people say, like, well, I have a hunch. Okay, well, if you tell me that, I don't know what size it is unless I've physically laid eyes on it. And that's okay to kind of play that guessing game for a few pieces. But when it's a whole house, the size differences can be wild. It can be 2 feet, it can be 10 feet. It just kind of depends. So just make sure you're taking the time and getting accurate quotes. And the other thing too is, when you're in your home, there are pieces of furniture that you walk by every day. There's artwork on your walls that you walk by every day, rugs on your floor, things that you wouldn't think to mention to your
Right.
mover, if you're doing something over the phone like that, versus if you have somebody that's trained eye to do that, coming in or even doing that through a video call, they're going to catch that kind of stuff. And you just want it to be a legit quote.
Wow, that's amazing. Those are great tips for anyone who's looking to actually move from one location to another, because like a rug, you wouldn't even think that it should be added
Yeah.
in code, but it should be, so I think that's very important tip to be giving out there. So thank you for sharing that. Now, when you are trying to project capacity for the next peak season, what would you say is the single most difficult piece of like this pieces of information that would make your resource planning, like securing more trucks or knowing where to recruit drivers, much clearer?
I mean, a big telltale for us is kind of what the market's doing at that point in time. If interest rates are low, or the Fed's made a cut or something, we know that we're about to get kind of busy. You could even have a wave during the winter months if something like that happens. But for us, as far as like really working inside the business, yeah, it's making sure that like your crews are good. Obviously, you're always going to do a lot of hiring come spring, to get prepared for summer.
Mhm.
And whether that's a seasonal hire, we have a lot of like teachers even that, hey, we just want something to do over the summer, or something like that. And that's great. Pull those in. We have kids that are in college that they're on their second, third year with us, where they come back every year. And, they just some extra cash over summer months and things like that too. But obviously trained well to still be able to do the job and what they're supposed to do. Truck maintenance, is everything working the way it's supposed to? How are we on budget for our own marketing for that following year? What is our plan? Where are our ad spend dollars going to go?
Right. Ultimately, as you said, I remember you said earlier that whatever gets the job done. Um,
Mhm.
to deliver whatever is needed in order to, and then just sort out the kinks of it, whether it's something that wasn't communicated or got lost during the communication. But I can see where you're very hands on to your customers, to your clients, because even like doing, as you suggested, have a walkthrough before you get a quote, and then during the move, or a few days before moving, right, be able to check in with your customers whether they're packed or not. And do you do that on your own, or like do you delegate it with your team as well for them
We
to?
delegate. Oh yeah, we delegate. Yeah, for sure. So my team's great. I'm the one that does like the on-site and the virtual estimate, so I get all of that done. Obviously get everything quoted for them, get all of the information put into the system. From there, they have my cell phone number. They can call or text me if they need absolutely anything leading up to move day. But I also have an introductory email that goes out to them just so that they are aware of my other team members. So I have my office manager and I have my operations manager. I give them both of their phone numbers and both of their emails. So my office manager, she does a 2-day check-in with them just to make sure that their move date is still good to go. Make sure because closing dates change last minute all the time. It happens. Things get pushed off. So just that final check-in. And then at that point, she also sends over their paperwork, which I've already gone over with them at that point, but then she takes a little extra time and just make sure that they understand everything that they're going to be going through and signing.
Wow.
And then they'll have my operations information as well. Obviously, he's getting crews out the morning of, giving arrival windows for the crews, things like that to get everything going. And then at the end of the move, they can circle back to any of us if they have any questions or need anything from there. They'll have a contact for everybody. So
That's amazing. Now, final question, I would say, but I think it's important to highlight here as well that you're a mom of two toddlers. Are you as detailed when it comes to like logistics of your household, your home, as you are with the business as well, or is that two separate Bethany that you
oh
put
God. I I
on?
wish I could be, but I feel like they run the house. So my oldest is 2.5, my youngest is 1. There's no such thing as a clean room anymore. I don't even know what clean is at this point. I love when I go into a client's house and they're like, excuse the mess. And it's exactly what I tell them is like, I don't even know what clean is anymore. This looks fine to me. Like, it's hard. It's hard to keep up. But it's totally worth it. As much as you can do in a day, but it's like when I get home and the kids are home and, it's just time for me to be mom. That's what I want to do. I really don't want to spend that time just constantly juggling cleaning and everything else, and just take the time, be mom for a little bit. We'll clean up after they go to bed, but just spend that time with them. So no, definitely not. I wish. Sometimes my pantry gets organized and I'm pretty excited about that. And that lasts about 10 minutes, before that's raided and destroyed again. But yeah, not the same.
We do what we can, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure that a lot of the moms who would be watching this as well, who's also in like the same career path as you, would have that kind of validation as well, that it's okay if it's a little bit messy. And I think that's also kind of something that you can use to leverage to your clients as well, that human touch, that it's not always going to be perfect.
Yep.
Ultimately it's being present, and the time that you spent with your loved ones is what really matters the most.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. It's different for everybody. It is. And yep, 100%.
Yeah, wonderful. So Bethany, for anyone who's looking to, watching this, that may be needing your personalized, highly hands-on service, where can they find you?
You can find me, Crop Moving and Storage. My email is bethany@crupmoving.com. Reach out to me if you guys need anything, you have any questions. You can also call me direct at 614-333-1691. I'm happy to help with any of your moving questions.
Wonderful. Bethany, thank you so much for sharing your journey from starting in radio copy to crushing it in the logistics world. What resonated really with me is that the consistency of whether you're selling security, advertising or cross country move. Success comes down to really believing in what you're doing, really having that respect as well, and that nurturing that human relationship that you build, whether it's the company that you're working with, or that person you have in front of you that you're walking through, who's making a big life decision or have already made a life decision and need support with that as well. So caring for the person on the other side, I really, really appreciate that. So any final words for our guest, or for rather for our audience?
I don't think so. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me on today.
Thank you so much. I'm your host, Haley. If this conversation helped you think differently about your business, the best way to support the show is to do two things: share this episode with one colleague or a friend or a family member, and hit subscribe right now so you never miss an insight. You've been listening to the Adapt AI podcast Spotlight series. Thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time.